here. The kind of things that you think I'll probably be fine, and then by the time you're at the bus stop, you're like,
hello, welcome everyone. Welcome everyone. We're just letting folks in. If you're just joining, Gunjan, I don't know if you want to
Yep.
welcome people.
Yeah. Welcome, everyone. Greetings for whatever time of the day it is in your part of the world. We will get started very shortly. We're just letting a few people in. But we're really excited to have you for today's call because we are sharing a very important moment for MCLD together. We do have interpretation available in Spanish and French for this call. So you'll see the instructions on the screen. Um, if you are English speakers, please select the English channel so that we can hear when our Francophones colleagues and our Spanish-speaking colleagues are speaking. So if you're French, select the French channel. If you're Spanish-speaking, select the Spanish channel. And if you're English-speaking, please select the English channel. As always, it's wonderful to know who we are sharing brain space with. So feel free to introduce yourself, where you're calling in from in the chat. And also throughout the call, feel free to type, write, share in the chat. If you have been to MCLD calls before, you know our calls are really about a collective space for participation and sharing. So we have a very active chat for most of our calls, and we hope to do the same today. So please do continue to introduce yourselves and share any thoughts, ideas that come in the chat. And we will get started. We have 5 minutes actually over time. So maybe we'll just get started, Nelly, as people join.
Yeah, that'd be great. I think if you haven't already, please feel free to put your name, where you're calling from, and your organization in the chat box as well. And then with that, Sarah, over to you for our introduction to MCLD quickly.
Thanks, Nelly, and hi, everyone. I'm Sarah Bulbul with MCLD. We are a dynamic, majority world-led network of networks that's dedicated to making sure that everybody, everywhere, has the fundamental right to voice in the decisions that affect their lives. We were launched 10 years ago in 2015 on the same day that the Sustainable Development Goals were announced, when a group came together with their belief in the power of communities. Today, we have over 3,000 local community-based organizations and 25 INGOs as members, and we're active in 25 countries through national associations. And these are the real heart of MCLD. They are organic groups of local organizations, the country offices of NGOs, and they've come together in these 25 countries, all towards our common goal of putting communities front and center in development. And then at MCLD, we recognize the imperative to move beyond conventional development paradigms, and we embrace a transformative model all based on equitable partnerships. Our ultimate goal is to bring community-led development to scale everywhere, but we have 5 goals on our journey to achieve that. And the first is voice and agency for women, youth, and all marginalized groups. We believe that all citizens need effective community-based civil society organizations to express their aspirations. Second, we have adequate community finance. Third, good local governance and local governments that are democratically elected and financially autonomous. Fourth, quality public services. And fifth, resilience. And through all of those goals, we are building a world where every community has the resources, knowledge, autonomy, and equitable partnerships to achieve their own goals.
Thank you, Sarah. So, that was a quick introduction to MCLD. I also realized I did not introduce myself. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Gunjan Veda. I have the honor of serving as the Global Secretary for MCLD. And today's call is about our strategic plan for 2025 to 2029. Now, hopefully, some of you, many of you actually, have been part of the 15-month strategic planning process that we have had at MCLD. So, in January last year, MCLD stepped into its new structure. And one of the things we realized as we stepped into a new structure and became a movement organization was we needed a strategic plan. But we needed a strategic plan that was shaped by our members, right? And reflected the challenges, the aspirations, the needs of our members and their own realities and contexts. And we set out on this marathon journey of doing, of creating a strategic plan with members. And I remember when we started, everybody was like, how on earth do you do a strategic plan with 3,000 members? It's not going to happen, right? And it's been an interesting process. We've learned a lot of lessons along the way. But we've had, not all 3,000, but many, many, many hundreds of organizations who have participated in this process over 15 months. And we now have that strategic plan. Um, some of you who were part of our 10th anniversary celebrations had a quick preview of what our new strategic plan entails. But for those of you who were not there, and also because then it was just a preview, now we actually have the full strategic plan. Today's call is about sharing the strategic plan, but it's about sharing it a little differently. So we will, of course, start by going through, what are the main pillars of our strategic plan, what's changed from what MCLD has traditionally been doing, especially in the current context, right? Because our world has changed a lot in the last few months. But we are also going to look at it from the perspective of our members, because many of us are already doing work along the pillars of our strategic plan. And so we're going to hear from a lot of members from different countries on the work that they are doing and how it feeds into the strategic planning priorities. And we are going to close this call by sharing some of our next steps in the process. So we have a wonderful co-created strategic plan that we will be sharing today. But the strategic plan is only as good as the implementation, right? We all know that. And so every national association is going to be creating these implementation plans. And then we're going to come up with a system by which we constantly reflect and see if our strategic plan is aligned with the current context and if the work we do is aligned with our strategic plan. So we're going to close with a little bit of this and what's next. So that's the agenda for our call today. But we're first going to start by actually introducing the strategic plan to you. And so Sarah, maybe we can get the slides up. So we began our strategic planning process last year. And in the strategic planning process, for strategic planning, we adopted something known as a transformative scenarios process. Now, I guess many people are actually, before I go into this, Nelly, I just realized, did we have an exercise?
We had just one quick question on the poll to see who has participated in the strategic planning process in their NAs or as a global member of MCLD.
Sorry, Sarah, why don't we do that first? Because then we'll also know how many people here have been part of it. So that may be a good way before we delve into the actual plan. Can we get the poll up? Perfect, thank you. So you should see a poll with a few questions on your screen. If you can please fill that out. Thank you.
So we have most people participated in the strategic planning process, but there's a fair number of people who haven't. About 30% didn't participate, 55% did participate so far. We'll give it just another minute, but I think maybe you can already
Begin
start
talk.
sharing. We have 2/3 of folks have responded at this point.
Okay, great. And Holta noted, you want more clarity on all of the pillars. So hopefully we will get that after today. All right. So we adopted, let's go back a little bit to the beginning. So last year when we started the strategic planning process, we adopted something known as a transformative scenarios process. If you're aware of scenario planning, then scenario planning is when we prepare for different versions of the future, right? And that is a pretty common method for strategic planning. But we wanted to do something slightly different, which was more aligned with who we are as MCLD. Because we don't just believe that we have to respond to the future. We believe that we have the power, we have the agency to actually actively shape the future we want to see. And so the transformative scenarios process actually looks at planning not just for the world that we are likely to see, but the world that we would like to see. Looking at our strengths, the values, and the resources that we have. So that's what we did with our strategic planning process. We began with a process where across different national associations, members participated in a mapping of what are MCLD values, what are our strengths as MCLD, but also began to look at the world we would like to see and the world we are likely to see, right? Because there's so much upheaval. It was slightly less last year than it is this year, but there's been so much change in our world. What is it that we are moving towards? And what would we like to move towards? Once we had that, all of that was curated into scenarios. And we had 4 scenarios of the future based on what we are likely to see and what we would like to see. Now, all of this information, if anybody wants more details, are available. It was shared at various points in the last 15 months with different members as they went through this process. We held calls at the global level, but national associations met sometimes in person and sometimes virtually to go over this. And we had a drafting committee comprising of members from different national associations like Sierra Leone, Nigeria, Rwanda, Benin, US, Kenya. So different national associations, the members came together in this drafting committee. This drafting committee finalized the scenarios, and then every national association met in person this year to look at how do we work towards these scenarios, the scenarios we would like to see from the scenarios we are likely to see, using our strengths and our values. What is our role and what should be our strategy? And that led to an identification of strategies and activities. This document we curated, and this was ratified by our Global Assembly, the Strategic Planning Committee of our Global Assembly. So as you may know, we now in our new structure have a Global Assembly which has 2 elected representatives from every national association. This Global Assembly created different subcommittees to do the work of laying the foundation for a strong MCLD when they were first constituted last year. One of those groups was the Strategic Planning Committee, and last month the Strategic Planning Committee met and ratified our strategic plan. So now we have the strategic plan. What is it and what does it say? Let's look at that. Next slide. Great. So our strategic plan from 2025 to 2029 revolves around 4 pillars. If you've been with MCLD for a while, then these 4 pillars would actually, some of them would be pretty familiar to you. Policy, practice, solidarity, and self-reliance. The first 3 pillars have been part of our strategic plan for a while now. Self-reliance is a new pillar. And yet, what we are doing in each of those pillars and what we intend to do in the strategic plan has changed. So we'll start with policy. MCLD began as a group for policy advocacy in 2015 when we were created. And policy advocacy has always been something we have done, we've worked very strongly on, both at the global level, but also at the national and regional level. So many of you were part of all the consultations that we did with USAID, for instance, to shape their policies. You were part of the consultations and the interactions that we organized between organizations, local civil society organizations, and bilateral institutions. We've been advocating on different agendas at various, on putting majority world voices and community voices front and center for a long time now. But one of the things we realized that wasn't happening was, how do we have accountability for commitments that are made? Over the years, we have seen funders, bilaterals, governments, institutions all make commitments. And yet, we have seen very few people delivering on those commitments. And so, accountability is key. And accountability has really been missing. And so, in our policy agenda currently, we are going to be focusing on accountability. We are going to be focusing on how do we, translate whatever great things we get into policy. How do we actually ensure that they get implemented? And that requires two things. It requires supporting those actors in actually implementing it, because many times people don't know how to do that. And we've seen that in Kenya, where devolution is part of the constitution. So there is a great policy level, directive, which says devolution should happen. And yet local governments don't know how to do it and have been coming to us. So we created the School for Devolution MCLD in Kenya. So now some of the initiatives that we have going under policy, to give you an example, is that we've been engaging with the OECD. And this month, actually, I want to say September 17th, Nelly? On the 17th of September, we are organizing a special consultation with OECD. OECD is coming up with guidelines on their new policy on locally led development. And so they want to hear from actors on what they should be doing. So we are focusing on that. But we also realized one of the big reasons we don't engage in some of these very key conversations, like financing for development, which just happened recently, is because they are so filled with jargon. They are so complicated and they seem so far away from us that it's very difficult to remove all those layers of, jargon which surround them to understand how this directly impacts our lives and what is the role that we can play in shaping these processes. And so a huge part of our agenda under policy in the strategic plan is about demystifying these processes and ensuring that our voices are shaping these processes. We have a commitment to strengthening multilateralism, but not the multilateralism that we currently see, which is extremely skewed and inequitable, right? Where some countries dictate what the rest of the world should do by having control over organizations, but a multilateralism which is much more grounded in equity. And so we are actively going to be participating in the UN at 80 process, which, for those of you who are not familiar, is a reforms process that the UN is trying to undergo itself in the current environment. So all of this is part of the policy pillar that we will be doing. So continue to do policy advocacy, but with a much greater emphasis on accountability. The next pillar is practice. And the practice, again, this is something we have already done. We've always done. We have our unlearning labs, we had the collaborative research team, we have the MCLD, the participatory CLD assessment tool, we have the trainings. So how do we actually translate some of the values and the things that we want to see into actual practice. We had the book that came out last year, which was based on the CLD assessment tool. For those of you who haven't seen the book, we are doing a book. Pathos in Netherlands is doing a virtual book launch on September 4th, and everybody is invited. We'll share the link in the chat shortly for that. So we've always focused on, a lot on practice. Our focus on practice so far, however, has been a lot more about us, right? How do we as CBOs, as INGOs, as networks change the way we do things to make it more aligned with the values of community-led development? What needs to change in monitoring and evaluation? What needs to change in the way we do strategic planning? What needs to change in the way we do communications or the way we design programs? However, now in practice, in this new strategic plan, the one big focus we are going to have is on supporting community mobilizing and organizing. So we understand that around the world, civic space is shrinking. And a huge part of this is because people no longer have faith in civil society. And that community mobilizing and organizing is very, very important, not just to regain the trust of people, but to enable communities to be able to be resilient in the face of the disasters which seem to hit us a dime a dozen. Like every week, every day, when you open the newspaper, there is a disaster in some part of the world. So a huge part of practice is going to be focusing on strengthening the capacities of member organizations to do community mobilizing and organizing. And so we're going to be supporting a lot more trainings, a lot more capacity strengthening. We are going to be supporting a lot more peer learning on this as we go forward. The third pillar is solidarity. Now, we've said for a while now that, it is not going to be everything that we want to do. It's going to be impossible to achieve it as MCLD alone, even if we move from being 3,000 to 30,000 organizations. A huge part of the challenge, the crisis we find ourselves in today, is because we are so fragmented as civil society. And so a huge part of what we have been doing over the years has been trying to connect with networks. Traditionally, MCLD was good at building connections within our members, right? So we connected at the national level. However, now the emphasis is much more on connecting with other like-minded networks and organizations and finding synergies on working together. We are also looking at how do we learn from each other and support each other in this process. We have a renewed commitment to diversity and inclusion in the current climate, and that includes, making sure all our resources are in different languages, making sure that our calls, whatever we do, including forums like the Youth Task Force, right? Strengthening them, but also ensuring that the Youth Task Force has Francophone, Spanish speaking, and other members, and they find ways of engaging with each other across language barriers. One key initiative that's going to come under solidarity is the intergenerational mentoring network. And we are going to invite shortly many, all of you, all members to sign up. There is so much of experience and knowledge that we have between our members, and so much that we can learn from each other. And so we really hope that this mentoring network will be a way not just to build connections and bridges, but for us to really learn from each other as we move forward under this work. And we also have this happening at the regional level. So for instance, we have a LAC working group on human rights defenders. And the Latin America and Caribbean region also has a collective fundraising working group where they're working together. The last thing I want to emphasize under solidarity is that for a long time, a lot of MCLD's emphasis was on Africa. Our coordinators were in Africa, our associations were in Africa. Last year, we were able to very systematically move into Latin America and Caribbean region. And now we have two under formation national associations in the region, Honduras and Colombia. But we also have members across most countries in the region. And this year, we've been able to bring in our Asia coordinator Namia is on this call. Namia, if you want to come on camera. And she is based in Sri Lanka. And with this, we will be able to support work across Asia. And we are also looking at supporting work across Europe and bringing in and inviting organizations from Europe into the network this year. So all of that is part of solidarity, which is making sure that we are not limited by region, by connecting the dots, by partnerships and collaborations, and just values aligned, coming together. Our final pillar, and this is a new pillar in terms of our strategy, but something we've talked about for a long time, is self-reliance. So, how do we equip MCLD and how do we equip our members to function in a post ODA world? And not just function, but to be able to actually do the work that we set out to do and we want to do in a post ODA world. Because we know an ODA is official development assistance. Sorry, I realize I have started using so much of this jargon myself with abbreviations. So we know USAID funding has gone. We know many countries across Europe have cut funding or have announced that they will be cutting funding. And we know that it is not going to be possible for philanthropy to really come in and fill this, which means that in order to do the work we want to do, to create the world we want to create, which is all the more important now than ever, we are going to have less and less access from the traditional resources that were there, right? So we have to find other ways of supporting our work, of doing our work. And how do we find those structures? All of that is part of our of our self-reliance pillar. But self-reliance is also about strengthening MCLD's own structure, about coming up with processes. And so we have a General Assembly now. We have policies now as MCLD. We have a much more streamlined process of membership. We have created a WhatsApp group where we can share information opportunities across members, because we realize that many of our members are not able to access emails. And I'll have a colleague put the link in the chat. So if you want to join the WhatsApp group, you have to opt into it. We have started collecting information on thematic focus of organizations, both to be able to share relevant opportunities, but also to be able to make connections and partnerships, because that's one way of sustaining what we do. It's by building these connections and collaborations across different types of organizations and stakeholders in the system. So all of that is part of the work that we have been doing under the self-reliance pillar and that we will continue to do. We are also going to, the final thing I do want to say at the self-reliance is that in this sector currently, we are expecting we are experiencing multiple crises. It's not just a crisis of losing funding and losing jobs, which many people are. It's a crisis of legitimacy. It's a crisis where the very people we believe we are supporting, serving, working with, actually have stopped or lost their trust in us in many places. So it's in many ways an existential crisis for us. There's a lot of stress. There are security threats. We have conflicts. We have all sorts of natural disasters happening. And so the stress and the burnout amongst us, amongst our members, amongst the teams of our members is very, very high. And we cannot continue to do the work we want to do for a better world if we are not able to take care of ourselves. And so well-being is going to be a huge priority for us under the self-reliance pillar. What will this look like? Well-being platforms, maybe spaces for mental health support. That's something that we will work together on. So this was a high-level view of what are these 4 pillars, what is some of the work which is going to continue, but also what are some of the shifts that have happened in the current strategic plan to align more with the moment, whether it's domestic resource mobilization or self-care, whether it's community mobilization, or whether it is much more focused on accountability. In the part of the consultations and all the co-creation, we received a lot of very great activity suggestions. on what should happen, from policy observatories to local, community groups and how they would be connected to each other to fight misinformation. Those specifics are not part of the current strategic plan that you will receive and the draft that you saw. And that is because to us, that should all be part of an implementation plan. Because while this is our overall strategy, we recognize that implementation will look different in different spaces. And we'll talk a little bit more about it at the end of today's call. But that's the overview of our strategic plan. Nelly, I know we have members sharing, but I wonder if we can take a couple of minutes to see if people have any specific questions.
I was thinking we should hold our questions until the end to make sure we have time for our speakers to go. But if people can put questions in the chat box, that way we will make sure to get all of the questions together. So if anyone has questions so far, we'll be learning much more about the strategic plan as we go. Please put them in the chat. And if you have any burning questions that you want to make sure happen right now, please let us know quickly. But I don't see any. All right. Well, you can continue to let us know. I'm going to introduce the folks who are going to be sharing about their work today. So we just got this really big overview of the strategic plan, and Gunjan laid out a lot of examples of what that looks like. But a lot of how this work looks across all of these pillars and across what MCLD has been doing and will continue to do is the work of all of our members, individually in their communities, with their coworkers, all over the world in all of the different regions. And so today we're going to be hearing from 7 of our members in all 5 regions of Latin America and the Caribbean, Asia, Southern Africa, East Africa, and West Africa, about how their work embodies different of these pillars. And of course, these pillars are not isolated. You know, when you're working in practice, you're also doing solidarity. When you're working on self-reliance, you're also focusing on practice or policy advocacy. So, you know, the work that they do applies across multiple pillars, but they're going to highlight it in one. So I'm going to introduce everybody at the top, and then we'll move through. So first we'll be hearing from Noélie Adji, who's representing the Association Nationale des Communes du Bénin. I apologize for my pronunciation, who's a part of MCLD Benin, and whose work strengthens women's leadership at the municipal level. Then we'll be hearing from Edgardo Benitez, who's from the Institute for the Common Future of Native Americans in Honduras, advocating for community, land, and indigenous rights. He is one of the co-coordinators of the MCLD Honduras National Association. Then Mekonnen Geletu from the Gurage Development and Cultural Association. He's also the coordinator of the Right to Grow project with MCLD Ethiopia, advocating and strengthening policy on nutrition and WASH. He'll be speaking on policy as well. Then Belinda Chimobo, again, I apologize for pronunciation, with the Youth Impact Organization supporting community advocacy on early childhood development with district officials in Malawi. Then Nancy Waweru, who's a member of MCLD Kenya and its steering committee. She leads the organization VAP, which uses sports to build solidarity, raise awareness, and co-design interventions with communities on issues like gender-based violence, mental health and livelihoods, and HIV. Then Nishant Joshi, who's the Program Support Officer at Humanitarian Aid International, a network of networks that supports community-led disaster response and recovery across 13 states in India. He leads the humanitarian response roster and frontline workers security there. And then finally, Yolam Niguira, who leads the Elangeni Youth Organization in Malawi, which mobilizes the community in environmental conservation and economic empowerment. he and Nishant will both be speaking on self-reliance. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Noelle first. If you want to come off mute and on video, Sarah will share your slides.
Bonjour Lily, bonjour à tous et à tous, à toutes et à tous du moins. Je suis très ravie de faire partie de cette belle communauté de pratique. Je vais aller en français. Je voudrais déjà m'excuser parce que je ne pourrai pas avoir beaucoup de temps, donc je communiquerai assez rapidement. Je suis en pleine conférence, donc je communique assez rapidement parce que c'est un engagement que j'ai pris. Mais mon contact reste disponible pour toute personne souhaitant me contacter, toute personne ayant des questions par rapport à ce que je vais exposer tout à l'heure. Alors, je suis Noélie Haïdji de l'Association nationale des communes du Bénin. Donc, l'intervention que je vais partager avec vous est relative à l'autonomisation des femmes, mais via le renforcement des capacités. Alors, cette initiative, elle a été conçue et elle est mise en place dans le cadre d'un soutien que nous recevons du gouvernement canadien par l'entremise de la Fédération canadienne des municipalités. Slide suivant, s'il vous plaît. Alors, je commence déjà par un récit de changement. Donc, à l'écran, vous avez une dame qui s'appelle Madame Alaba, qui travaille dans une municipalité du Bénin, notamment une municipalité du centre du Bénin, donc la ville de Dassazoumé, qui nous dit que grâce au soutien qu'elle a reçu à travers nos formations, qu'elle a pu cerner tous les contours des dispositions qu'il lui fallait prendre lorsqu'elle est victime de harcèlement verbal. Ensuite, elle l'a partagé également avec nous en avril dernier seulement, en avril 2024, pardon, quelques améliorations qu'elle a apportées à son travail en tant qu'agent municipal. Elle nous a dit que grâce à nos formations, elle avait compris qu'il fallait prioriser l'accueil des personnes vulnérables et que désormais, elle sait que quand elle a affaire à une femme enceinte, à une personne âgée ou à une femme avec un enfant, notamment en bas âge, que ces personnes sont jugées prioritaires et qu'elle devrait pouvoir donner le meilleur d'elles pour les satisfaire le plus rapidement possible. Elle nous a également dit que grâce à nos formations, elle a contribué à aider ses collègues, ses collaborateurs, puisque c'est elle qui coordonne euh, le travail qui est fait au niveau des secrétaires d'arrondissement de la municipalité, qu'elle les a aidés à améliorer la qualité de leur rapport, mais qu'elle a également partagé les acquis des formations qu'elle a reçues avec ces personnes-là pour améliorer l'accueil des usagers et donc des populations. Dans quel contexte tout ceci est arrivé? Slide suivant. En termes de contexte, j'aimerais juste préciser que notre intervention est menée par l'Association nationale des communes du Bénin, une association composée de toutes les 77 communes du Bénin. Nous avons donc, entre autres, pour responsabilité d'accompagner les municipalités à améliorer la fourniture des services délivrés, à améliorer, pardon, la qualité des services délivrés aux populations. Et dans ce cadre-là, nous intervenons sur plusieurs volets. En tout cas, le projet intervient sur plusieurs volets. Mais aujourd'hui, je me focalise sur l'autonomisation des femmes à travers le renforcement des capacités. Et dans ce cadre, nous avons conduit une étude en 2022. Et cette étude a révélé que les femmes font face à beaucoup de défis lorsqu'elles sont fonctionnaires municipales. Il y a les défis qui sont liés à elles-mêmes, des problèmes de compétences, de capacités, de confiance en soi. Il y a des défis qui sont liés à l'environnement, donc leur environnement de travail, la relation avec les collègues, hommes comme femmes, les microagressions dont elles sont victimes parfois, les conditions de travail pas toujours adaptées, qui ne sont pas toujours favorables à la conciliation de la vie privée et de la vie professionnelle, etc. Et puis, il y a les défis de la communauté auxquels elle doit faire face, la famille, la société, qui parfois estiment que les femmes ne devraient pas occuper des positions importantes, y compris lorsqu'il s'agit de postes nominatifs, donc de postes de fonctionnaires, techniciens purs et durs. Alors, tenant compte de ces défis, nous avons mis en place une intervention. Et cette intervention consistait donc à renforcer en capacité les femmes. Et pour le faire, nous avons voulu sortir de l'approche classique qui est de designer quelque chose pour les femmes. Slide suivant, s'il vous plaît. Nous avons imaginé qu'il serait plus intéressant de laisser les femmes parler elles-mêmes. Et dans ce cas-là, nous avons fait de grandes consultations qui ont réuni du moins les femmes fonctionnaires de municipalité à différents postes d'un peu partout, de presque toutes les régions du pays. Il y a eu un échantillon qui a été mis en place et cet échantillon a eu pour rôle d'aller plus en profondeur en ce qui concerne les défis relatés par l'étude et de nous dire quels étaient concrètement leurs besoins en termes de renforcement de capacité. Et donc, il y a eu un listing des besoins en renforcement de capacité et puis il y a eu finalement une organisation par priorité de ces besoins-là en capacité et ça a donné lieu au thème de formation que vous pouvez voir à l'écran. Et donc, on a renforcé les capacités d'une cinquantaine de femmes sur l'art de prendre la parole en public, la rédaction administrative, la prévention et la gestion des cas de harcèlement sexuel ou verbal, le numérique, par exemple, savoir utiliser Word, Excel, PowerPoint, pouvoir ouvrir et faire fonctionner une boîte mail, faire des recherches sur Internet. Ça peut sembler banal, mais ce n'est pas du tout le cas parce
Noelle, I'm
oui.
going to have to ask you to wrap up quickly.
Ok, donc ça peut sembler banal, mais ce sont des besoins réels de ces femmes-là et nous les avons renforcés en capacité sur ces sujets-là et nous avons mis en place une plateforme pour le partage d'expériences. Alors, quelques acquis. En dehors de cette femme, nous avons eu des retours très positifs aussi. Vous pouvez le voir à l'écran. Certaines ont dit connaissaient des fonctionnalités de Excel, mais qu'elles ont oubliées avec le temps en travaillant. Et donc, ces formations les ont aidées à se remémorer ces fonctionnalités-là et être plus efficaces dans leur manière de travailler. Ensuite, nous avons fait comment on dit, une évaluation de nos formations. Et l'évaluation a démontré, en tout cas d'après ce que les femmes nous ont dit,
I'm so
qu'il y a eu une
sorry.
amélioration. Je suis pratiquement à la fin. Exactement, merci. Donc, vous avez mon contact. N'hésitez pas à me faire signe au besoin pour compléter et répondre à vos questions. Merci.
Thank you so much, and I'm so sorry to keep us moving. I warned all of our presenters today that we might have to do that. So with that, quickly over to Edgardo from Honduras. If you can also come off mute and on camera.
Buenos días a todos y todas que participan en este evento. Gracias por la invitación. Yo quiero plantear, partiendo de la lectura que he tenido la oportunidad entre ayer y anoche, de leer el documento del plan estratégico. Quisiera, dado el tiempo corto que tenemos, en vez de hablar, porque hay infinidad de cosas que hablar de nuestro trabajo en las comunidades y eso no nos da tiempo. Quiero dejar punteado mejor mi punto de vista con relación al documento del plan estratégico. Sé que no es fácil trabajar con 3.000 y llegar a un consenso de esta naturaleza. Pero quiero señalar que a mi gusto todavía siento que no está reflejado algunos aspectos que como pueblos indígenas venimos demandando desde hace muchos tiempos. Temas que tienen que ver con la lucha de la liberación. Temas que tienen que ver con el cambio de paradigma, la búsqueda permanente de cambiar ese paradigma impuesto de dominación que nos ha mantenido siempre en la situación en que nuestros pueblos se encuentran. Creo que eso debe ser de alguna manera un punto de análisis en el documento del movimiento en este escenario global. El otro aspecto creo que es importante es que como movimiento, un proceso organizativo, tenemos que buscar esa trascendencia. La trascendencia en el sentido de que no las comunidades tenemos que quedarnos enfrascados, como siempre nos han tratado, de ser los receptores de todo lo que viene de afuera, sino al contrario, como nuestras comunidades pueden aportar a través de su lucha, de sus opiniones, de sus ideas, de sus conocimientos a los cambios que requiere esta nueva sociedad mundial. Es importante entonces no solamente ver a esta altura los temas que nos conduce a lo local, a lo nacional, cuando hay un nuevo planteamiento que es en el planeta. Eso significa que nuestro movimiento, el MDSL, tiene que tener de alguna manera la capacidad, crear y tener todas las instituciones mundiales que toman acción y que tienen actores que de alguna manera toman otro nivel de decisiones que afectan los comunidades. Tenemos que entonces ver un movimiento que trascienda a ese nivel. ¿Por qué no hablar con la gente de BRICS? ¿Por qué no hablar con la OTAN? Naciones Unidas al más alto nivel, porque ahí hay toma de decisiones de alguna manera que afectan la implementación real a través de gobiernos o a través de terceros, a través de otro tipo de actores, empresas, que afecta la vida de nuestras comunidades. Entonces, el documento en sí, que me parece, como lo dije al principio, muy maravilloso, mis felicitaciones, pero sí entendería que de alguna manera dejar este planteamiento desde mi punto de vista, que estamos en un proceso de organización en Honduras y sentimos que todavía queda esos vacíos. Lo siento como una debilidad desde un punto de vista cuando nosotros estamos buscando ese reconocimiento de hace muchos tiempo, donde tenemos infinidad de mártires de nuestras comunidades que son perseguidos, asesinados día a día en todo el rincón del planeta por defender el agua, por defender los recursos naturales, por defender los derechos de las personas. Ese tipo de situaciones que estamos viviendo no lo siento todavía reflejado en nuestra comunidad, en este documento, quiero decir, mis disculpas. Entonces, les ruego, les pido a Guñan y todo el equipo que han trabajado a ver de qué manera se puede de alguna manera, de alguna forma,
Thank you, Edgardo. And
incluir
unfortunately, we will
algo
need
de
to
lo que queremos.
start to wrap up.
Gracias.
Ah,
Okay.
ah.
Gracias.
Thank you so much,
Gracias.
Edgardo. And I really appreciate all of your comments there. We'll speak more about this at the end, but the strategic plan, one, in some ways is a living document. We'll continue to reflect on it and see how the context and the needs change. And also, as we discussed, the next stage will be the implementation plans, where, as Gunjan said, a lot of the details of how this actually looks in practice and how it looks different in different places, that will come out there. And I think all of the points that you raised are really important, and they're speaking to what the policy work of MCLD should look like. So we know that you work on advocating for rights locally in Honduras, but you're also making points about what that looks like at a global level with our global network. And that's really important. So thank you. And with that, Makonnen, over to you if you want to come off mute and on video.
Okay. Nice to meet you, all of you. Just Makonnen from Krage Development and Cultural Association. I'm working as a Right to Grow project coordinator. So just as Krage Development and Cultural Association, we are just this non-profit and non-governmental organization, just that established for community-based initiatives before before 20 years. Therefore, currently we may have around 100 staff, professional staff, and uh, 100 staff, and also we are just expanding around 205 million currently, and we're around 15 million is from our internal source. The other is from donors, and our governance is based upon board administrations, and we have also around 3,000 active members. They can just contribute the membership fee. So based upon this, the main goal of our organization is to work with the communities to alleviate socioeconomic challenges, especially our community are very tough for development, so we coordinate the community to challenge their problem in collaboration with the government. In most cases, that our key areas are we are just working to construct the health institutions, educational institution to expand the services. In addition to that, we have also water and cultural interventions in depth. And also we are also working on capacity building as well as influencing the government towards the community gaps, especially for the capacity building part. We may just focus on certain thematic areas like the health thematic area, educational, cultural areas. However, most cases, that the government's professional by itself lacks some understanding on the thematic areas policies. So we try to capacitate government experts on policies by itself. So based upon this purpose, we are working with different other NGOs. Especially one of our donor project is Right to Grow projects. The Right to Grow projects main objective or main goal is to enhance children development with their full potentials just by decreasing the stunted children. Upon that, we try to focus on creating the awareness based upon nutrition and wash concepts. In addition to that, we also just capacitate the community on their rights and entitlement parts, as well as on service standards. Then we also work on capacitating the CSO, especially the associations, women's disabled youth associations, likes, and also there are stakeholders who are working around us. So we try to capacitate them by making networking. So this is we are just focusing on how we can capacitate our community as well as the experts within the government who alleviate the nutrition and wash gaps. In addition to this, we also work on budget policies. Therefore, we have tools for an advocacy for advocacy purpose, for example, CV or citizen voice to action, VCA, vision, commitment, and action, as well as BMate budget monitoring and expenditure tracking are the three advocacy tools that we are just practicing in Right to Grow project. Therefore, since Right to Grow project is a consulting project, we are just working as one consortium members and to come up with ensure accountability. For example, in the case of VCA, we try to capacitate the community as well as the government experts to come up with a common understanding on nutrition and waste services gaps. So we try to just enhance them to identify priority gaps. And finally, they develop an action plan, and then based upon their responsibilities, they try to alleviate the prioritized gaps. In the case of VCA, we try to work on to change the community's mind to work for changes. So it is a capacity building advocacy goal. But in the case of budget monitoring and expenditure tracking, we make the budget analysis of the government so that we push the government to allocate more budget for nutrition and wash budget. You know that we have Abuja declaration. Based upon that declaration, the government should allocate 50% of its budget for nutrition. So push the government to be accountable for his commitment based upon such kinds of declaration. In addition, you know that our five pro sectors should have a budget amount of 65% of total government budget. However, still there are gaps on that, so we allocate that part again also. Lastly, we have also some successful results based upon especially the CV processes. We work based upon the Right to Grow project. We work around 18 cabales. So out of these 18 cabales, 17 of these are just already declared ODF free. And as household level, there are also vegetarian gardening as well as poultry farming practice are well developed in all of these 18 cabales. In addition to that, there are also service improvements regarding to water and sanitation by itself. Not only household levels, there are also institutions that come up with such kind of service improvement. So the case of the multi-sectoral approach, we also advocate on that to integrate sectors to work together to affect such kind of gaps so that we come up with a nutrition council establishment as well as a nutrition issue will be agenda on such kind of council meeting. This is a few of the
I'm
successes
so
that
sorry. We will have to
that,
move to the next person in a moment.
thank you very much.
If you want to say any last thing, please do.
Yeah, this is what I want to say. In addition to that, there is also scale up of such kind of successful results to others, zonal, regional level, and more of such kind of project is really led by a networking system. So the networking system by itself contributed a lot for us. Therefore, it is good to end due to time constraint. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And it's also a great example of the kind of collective action that a national association can take. As you say, the power of working as a network on policy and practice. All right. The next person is Belinda, but I'm not sure, she may have dropped. So we will hope she comes back. And in the meantime, we will turn over to Nancy, who will be speaking around solidarity and their work building solidarity. Nancy, if you can go off mute and on camera.
Yeah, can you hear me, Nelly?
Yep, hear you very well.
Oh, thank you very much. I just want first to take this opportunity to thank MCLD for giving me an opportunity to speak in this forum. First, I'd want to begin by just giving an overview of what we do as an organization. I work with Vijana Mani Pamoja, and we use football not only as a tool or as a sport, but as a powerful tool for solidarity as well as practice. I know I'll be talking more about solidarity pillar. And so you cannot talk about solidarity and also leave the aspect of practice. So I'll touch briefly about the pillar of practice as well. Well, on the pitch, everyone comes together regardless of gender, background, or even status. For us as Vijana Amani Pamoja, we see teamwork, respect, and shared goals in action. And that is the spirit of unity. And this is exactly what we carry into our gender-based violence program, a program that creates awareness using the power of sports. And this is a program that is being implemented in different countries within our networking web, that is in Tanzania, Zambia, Zimbabwe, and us Kenya. We are the hub. So solidarity, as emphasized in the movement for community-led development, means standing with communities, and in this case, not above them, but working with them to co-design interventions that are survivor, in the case of gender-based violence, that are survivor centric, and again, interventions that will create room and spaces for community members, for other stakeholders to come together and weave solutions, grassroots solutions that actually creates a lastful impact in terms of creating awareness on gender-based violence. Like I said, our GBV program is community-driven, and this is where we work with women and girls in informal settlement and help shape the interventions. In the beginning of last year, we called upon different stakeholders, government also, to come together and design a curriculum that was to be implemented, like I said, in Zambia, Zimbabwe, and Tanzania. So Kenya, we lead as the regional hub, and then the interventions are replicated in the 3 other countries. So survivors inform the kind of psychosocial support and safe spaces that we need. We have an element of course, mental health when you're working with programs on gender-based violence. You have to have, of course, a trauma-informed approach to support survivors to navigate through supporting them with mental health support, and also reintegrating them in the community by providing them with access to livelihood opportunities, and again, also supporting them through the litigation process. If there are those who already have filed cases, we try as much as possible to work with communities, to work with organizations that are legally based, and this also strengthens the pillar of solidarity. The other aspect that we integrate is we bring on board men and boys through creating male champions who come in as role models to challenge harmful norms and to speak up against violence and positive, and of course model positive masculinities. And this is whereby we shift the lens, where in most cases we'll see men, when we're talking about especially violence against women, men as perpetrators, but then we give a space where we create awareness on positive masculinity and emphasize on resocializing men in a different way. And in this case, for them to show respect to women, for them to embrace gender equality, and to come strongly to defend violence against women. So for us, the
also
gender-based
going to
violence is
have to ask you to wrap up. I'm so sorry. But please
yes.
give your final thoughts.
Yeah, thank you for that. So for us, solidarity is about consistent action, calling upon different actors, that is both, of course, community members and government to come in together and open up dialogues and open up spaces where we can come together, work together, and support our communities. And maybe just one final thing that I'd want to comment is we are also working with different counties through the School of Devolution, which is, of course, a key outcome of solidarity. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you so much, Nancy. And Nancy is stepping away. She's currently with her teams in Norway, where they're playing in the Homeless World Cup, and the final is on Saturday. So we're rooting for you. All right, then I'm going to hand over to Nishant. Are you there?
I'm here, Nancy. Thank you so much. Sorry, Nelly. My apologies. Thank you so much to MCLD for providing us this platform to introduce Humanitarian Aid International. It's an Indian not-for-profit organization working for the endowment of an equitable humanitarian sector, rooted in traditional capacity strengthening through humanitarian response. I'm sorry, next slide, please. So the focus areas that we work through are humanitarian response, disaster risk reduction, climate change adaptation, and humanitarian advocacy. Humanitarian Aid International is a disruptive advocate for capacity sharing through global South-South cooperation and strengthening capacities for local NGOs across the global South in collaboration with actors from the global North. Can I have the next slide, please? So why localization matters? As you may know, the most affected populations are often the first ones to react to disasters, even before governments, civil societies, monitoring systems, or emergency units are activated, is the people who are actually living the realities in which they are rooted for, say, centuries or years. They are the ones who are the first ones to always respond and continue to work on their development initiatives, even during non-emergency situations. And you would see that often existing systems take ownership for their own long-term sustained solutions. There's something that Edgardo said earlier, that communities should not just be seen as recipients of aid. So currently in a top-down aid architecture, there's this trickle-down decision-making in humanitarian action. And the perspectives that traditional delivery of aid uses are not usually context specific. There's a no one-size-fits-all solution. Everything is based on different caveats such as geographies, demographic makeups, solutions that are already present, and indigenous solutions that can be employed in the future. So the way Humanitarian Aid International operates is that we let communities take ownership of their own development and their own initiatives. And we work by complementing the existing structures through vertical and horizontal linkages. This helps in reducing response time and supporting scalable initiatives with transferable skills and knowledge that are relevant and timely and effective in localized contexts. Can I have the next slide, please? Now, our efforts are carried out through a four-pronged approach. One of them is the Local Organizations Coalition for Advancing Localization, the acronym LOCAL. It's a grassroots level coalition of organizations across India with 27 members representing the organization right now. Representing the coalition right now. And the way we act is not as individual siloed organizations, but as nodes in a complex web of interconnected capacities. So that even if one organization does not have the present capacity to enact everything, we can share our resources and strengths. Humanitarian Aid International is also present in global discourses such as Charter for Change, the Grand Bargain, Action for Empowering Partnerships, and ADRRN, Pledge for Change, and also START Network. We are also avid proponents of the security of frontline humanitarian workers. As Gunjan had mentioned earlier, that mental health risks on humanitarian frontline workers and their physical well-being are often looked over when it comes to risk sharing and talking about equitable humanitarianism. So we are also advocating for a bill of universal rights for frontline humanitarian workers, which is based off of this study on frontline workers. I can put the link in the chat also if you would like. Can I have the next one, please?
And we'll also
So
have to
when it
wrap up in just a minute, Nishant.
okay, thank you so much for that. So the way we approach self-reliance is basically looking at humanitarian action through a decolonial perspective. And your modus loquendi should precede your modus operandi. So instead of using words like localization, we try to use words like relocalization. Instead of empower, we use complementary capacity sharing. And instead of using words like global north or global south, we use north-based or south-based organizations. By putting policy into practice, it could be difficult, but there is a need for a perceptual shift. So when there is ground level initiatives that take ownership of their own work, then those kind of perceptual changes can be leveraged on a global scale as well. I think I should wrap up now, but thank you so much for offering the time.
Thank you very much. I appreciate everybody moving through these quickly. Also, I think that Humanitarian Aid International, that presentation is a perfect example of how all of this work really spans all of the pillars. You were speaking on self-reliance, but you also spoke about advocacy. This is obviously a ton of practice, and it's works through solidarity as a network of networks. So thank you for highlighting that. Finally, we are going to hear from Yolam in Malawi. If you're there and can come on camera, we see you can go off mute and share.
Hello.
Hi there, we hear you.
Yeah, so I'm Yoram from Malawi. Yeah, I'm going to share on the issue of self-reliance. So this all started because of some frustrations and unemployment issues in the country and the rampant poverty that we are facing as a country. So we mobilized the youths and the community in 2020 and 2019 rather. So our main focus was is actually on the issue of economic empowerment. So we ventured into agriculture, like you can see in the pictures. We believe that agriculture can be a substitute plan for the issues of our country. And this is why we ventured into agriculture. It can also help create jobs because we should not, we have the mind that we should not rely on the government each time. And this is why we are being frustrated as the youth of the country. So we encourage the youth, we give them skills, we teach them skills on the issue of modern farming technologies, like what we are doing there. This is some sort of like an improved system of agriculture. We're not using canes. So we approach the banks to borrow us some, to support us financially. So we buy some the things that can help us boost our agriculture. Yeah, so this is what we are doing as an organization in the rural communities of Malawi. Yeah, so you can go to the next slide. Let's see. Can you go to the next slide, please? Oh, I lost
We used a sample of the photos you sent, Yolam. We weren't able to use all of them.
Oh, all right, fine. Yeah,
Sorry for
so
the
it's not only
confusion.
it's not only that, we have also embedded into what we call the village savings and loans. Locally, it is called the village banks. So we have mobilized the community through groups. They can be grouped into 20 or 30 individuals. So what they do at the village banks, the VSLs, they share their earnings for profit. Some sort of like you go to the bank and you put your money into the bank, you put into a fixed deposit, it has to mature. So this is what we do. When the groups have been mobilized, they bank their earnings, and someone has to come in and borrow. If they borrow, it comes up with an interest. So that's how these things are going, the VSL groups in the community, because we believe that our, our economy is based on communities in Malawi. So we have to take that step. We mobilize and share what we believe can work. So that's one of the things that we do. Not only that, I've already talked about agriculture. Into agriculture, we also ventured into beekeeping because we believe that beekeeping is not only there to help us conserve our environment, but it is also profitable. So we are training our youths, like you can see in the pictures, we are training our youths on how to make beehives. We also had an opportunity to attend the National Honey Show last year. That was organized by the Malawi Bee Products Association, which is the body, the main body of the Beekeepers Association of Malawi. So these are our youths, and they've been trained on how they can do honey production. On the other hand, as we attended the National Honey Show, we are showcasing our products, and it was really beautiful. So beekeeping is profitable, and we believe that it can help us boost the economy of the economy. Yeah, so that's what we do on economic empowerment. On environmental conservation, we have managed to mobilize the youths in the community into tree planting. So far, we have planted about 2,000 trees, which we believe that we will do more because we are discussing with a certain NGO, which we call the Total Land Care Malawi through the Department of Forestry. We are proposing that in the next 3 years, we have to plant about 20,000 trees. And this is going to really help us reforestate. And into that, also beekeeping is there to help us conserve our forests. Because when you hang your beehives into the already existing forests, I think it's only the one who is some sort of like crazy who come into the forest and cut down the trees. Yeah, so that's what we are doing. We are using beekeeping as an economic empowerment tool, and also as an environmental conservation tool. So it hits both sides, both for the economy and also for the environment.
I'll also have to ask you to just give a few final thoughts now.
All right. Our final thoughts are that self-reliance can really help us sustain our development in the country. And this is all about mindset change. This is why we are into self-reliance. But we are not shutting ourselves down from stakeholders. Stakeholders can come in because we need an extended hand right now. We have tried our best, but we really need some extended hand to come in. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. And it's amazing. It has been such a privilege for me to be able to have these preparation calls with all 7 of the people. Unfortunately, Belinda wasn't able to be here. Just to hear the depth and thought and comprehensiveness with which everybody is working on these really different issues. I mean, Yolam, what you just described, you're working on economic empowerment and conservation, but you're doing it in all of these ways with, beekeeping and reforestation and gardening and baking, and even thinking about like guerrilla tactics, like putting beehives
Yes.
in the forest so that people are even more unlikely to cut them down, is amazing. And
Yeah.
I think it also, these presentations really demonstrate the breadth of what MCLD's members are doing, everything from, using sports to address gender-based violence, conservation as a way of community mobilization and economic empowerment, working with local municipal government to improve women's leadership in Benin, or WASH and nutrition in Ethiopia. And Belinda, who couldn't join today, they capacitate communities to advocate at the district level in Malawi on early childhood development. And then, of course, Nishant in India on the community-led humanitarian relief work. So it shows just how much is happening, and again, how much just like incredible innovation and thinking and across policy, practice, solidarity, and self-reliance is in all of the work that everyone's doing. As Gunjan mentioned at the beginning, one of the things that we're also trying to do is have more and more ways for members to connect and share the depth of their stories with each other, whether that's through the WhatsApp group, or this mentorship program we're thinking about, the working groups, the youth task force, on calls like this and the leadership development call. So if you have ideas, if you want to share your stories like this, please be sure to let the National Association leads know, the regional coordinators know, any of us, and we'll try to find platforms and spaces for that. Quickly before we go, I want to just remind people of the next steps in the strategic planning process. Gunjan already mentioned at the beginning, but now that the strategic plan has gone through this big process, there's been feedback at every stage. It's being finalized and designed to look really beautiful. Thank you, Sarah. And that should be done by mid or end of September, the very final document done. And then every national association will come back together to make their own implementation plan based on the global strategic plan. That's where, as Gunjan said, the details of how this looks in every country, in every region, will really come out. And as Edgardo was sharing towards the beginning, that's also where the nuance of what needs to be added, especially for different regions, will really be revealed. Once those implementation plans should be ready by around December 5th, And then they'll be shared with the Global Assembly, our global governing body with representation from every national association. And the Global Assembly, and in particular, the strategic planning subgroup or committee in the Global Assembly, they will accompany all of us on this. They'll review progress on the plans. There'll be a platform to reflect on the changes that are needed as, you know, our contexts keep changing. And the Secretariat will be there to support each of the national associations as they try to implement the strategic plans, including by connecting national associations that are doing similar work, providing more opportunities for peer learning, things like that. So that is the next step. All of the members and national associations can keep their eyes open for information on that. And with that, we will, I wanted to make sure again to just check in if people have questions or questions for any of the speakers, for us on the strategic plan or the next steps. Feel free to raise your hand or put them in the chat box. I've seen a lot of comments asking for the presentations. We will share those with everyone. I don't see any questions. I'm sure there are some, but we will continue to be open for hearing them. Oh yes, please, Frank. If you want to come off mute and ask your question.
Ok, merci beaucoup. Merci. Je salue tous les collègues. Moi, c'est Franck Adamado de l'ONG Assopil au Bénin. Dans le chat, j'ai souhaité avoir le contact de Madame Nelly Haïdi et aussi j'ai laissé mon contact pour être intégré dans le groupe WhatsApp afin de bénéficier des échanges comme je l'ai indiqué. Voilà mes préoccupations. Comme vous l'avez déjà promis, nous allons espérer les différentes communications pour mieux nous approprier des outils et des orientations. Merci beaucoup une fois encore, nous sommes ensemble.
Thank you so much. I put my email in the chat if anybody wants to reach out, and we will also gather the information that people put in about the WhatsApp group from the chat. Ogeni.
Yes, thank you so much, Nelly, and the team from all over the world. This is Ogeni Morris from MCLD Uganda chapter. Mine is just a piece of appreciation. I'd like to appreciate colleagues who presented. It was really a very good learning point from what others are doing in different parts of the world. We hope next time also we shall have presentations from Uganda. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Appreciation to everybody who shared. Sarah, we can just close with that final slide on other events that are coming up. There's always a lot happening at MCLD, so just wanted you to be aware. Oops, sorry, Sarah. We see your screen. We see your Slack, Sarah. We have 2 consultations coming up with different multilateral entities, as Gunjan mentioned, with the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, which is the European funder group. That's on September 17th. And then there will also be a workshop where we'll be sharing more of these, all of our innovative practices with Local 2030, which is the UN's platform for local action. That'll be on October 15th. Gunjan mentioned the book launch, which features many members happening with Partos on September 7th. And then a month from now, we'll have our next global call. There's also the WhatsApp group happening. there's a survey where people can note what their thematic focuses are. That helps us to reach out to people when there's specific opportunities, or to connect with other people who are working on the same thing. And to when there's like places to speak on those particular topics, we know who to reach out to. And also a reminder that if you aren't subscribed to the newsletter, which has all of this information and also features stories of different members in every one, please do. We'll put that in the chat as well. And with that, Gunjan, Sarah, anyone else? Is there any other announcements to mention?
No announcement, just to say a really, really big thank you to everybody who has been part of of the process. Getting to the strategic plan was a lot of work. It was a lot of work that happened at the National Association level. That was done by our members, that was supported by the coordinators, the boards, everybody working in a voluntary capacity, right? So, just a really, really big thank you for everything that you do and continue to do to make the movement strong, but to really carry our values and the vision forward. So, thank you. And then we can unmute in typical MCLD fashion and say goodbye together in our languages, wherever we are.
Bye, everyone.
Stop soon.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you again so much to everybody who spoke. Nishant, Belinda, Nancy,
Goodbye, Dr. John.
Willie, Edgardo, Makonnen. Thank you so much.
Bye bye.
Yeah, goodbye.
Goodbye, goodbye.
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 Yeah, goodbye. Au revoir.